November the 1st, 2024. I am Brett Burney from appsandlaw.com.
And this is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD. Hey, Brett, happy November.
Good.
Gosh, new month.
I know. It's like, goodness gracious, I cannot believe it's already November. I mean, it was just like July yesterday, and now it's November. It's a little nuts on there. But hey, we're heading to that time of the holidays. And for us, it's that time that Apple may be making some additional announcements. Not only did they make one announcement, there were 3 announcements this past week, Jeff, and nothing to do with the iPhone. It was all on the Mac side. We had a new Mac Mini, we had a new iMac, and some new MacBook Pros. Not some huge jumps in there, although the Mac Mini was a little bit of a change, but definitely some improvements on the processors and, more speed, better cameras, all the better kind of stuff that came in this week.
Yeah, you can get the itty bitty details from the people that do the detailed posts. But from a big picture, what Apple is doing is they have their newest processor, the M4, which before this week was available in the iPad. I have it in my iPad right here.
Yeah,
but now it's
right.
brought to the Mac. So you got the latest and greatest processor. And of course, it's not just the M4, there's the M4 Pro and stuff like that. But then additionally, Apple is upping the memory on all of its computers. So it's now at least 16 gigabytes. And, one thing that we are learning is, and I think the memory is good for a million different reasons, but my suspicion is the reason Apple is doing this, and this is both an iPhone and an iPad and now a Mac thing, is that the future is Apple intelligence. I think that's what Apple believes.
Yep.
And
right.
Because Apple, for privacy reasons, wants to do a lot of that stuff on device, it just eats up memory. And so they're now saying that even if you get that entry level Mac, they still want you to have 16 gigs of memory so that it's going to be able to handle going forward. So that's sort of like the big picture thing. Otherwise, the iMacs are pretty. They're basically the same as before. The colors are tweaked a little bit. As someone who uses a Mac Mini at home, and I have a Mac Mini M2 Pro, which is a more than wonderful machine. I don't need anything else at all. I'm perfectly fine. But I have to admit that when I saw this new Mac Mini, it's smaller and it's got ports in the front, which is sort of nice.
Right.
And, that could be really useful. And for a brief moment, I'm like, well, maybe I do need a Mac Mini on my life. And then I'm like, no. I'm totally fine. I don't need the speed. Everything's good. But it's nice to know that whenever, 2-3 years from now, who knows, Macs last a long time. Whenever I get to the point where I want to upgrade, they would presumably still have this cute new design, and it looks great. So
before even getting to the actual hardware on there, I just thought that it was so interesting this past week that instead of like one big keynote address, right, that we normally all wait for, and I reserve it on my calendar to make sure I'm there. There were 3 mini announcements. I think there were 10-minute videos that Apple released. Was it Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I believe? And there was one product for each video. I just thought that was really interesting. Is this sort of the way it's going to go? There wasn't a big event where all of the reviewers and journalists came around. There wasn't, a place where, particular time that everybody got together and they watched. I mean, some probably had some watch parties, but I just really thought that was interesting on the way that Apple was doing that. Are they experimenting with other ways to make announcements? Because I thought it was very effective. It was sort of kind of like a dribble, a triple thread of announcements this week, as opposed to just one big punch in the face.
That's what I think. When you think about it, WWDC, their big developer conference, you got people in town. It's a big keynote.
Sure.
That's its own thing, and it's going to do the own thing. And then every September, in that second week of September, we're going to have the iPhone announcement, and that's a big deal. The iPhone's the biggest product for Apple. They're going to have people from around the world come. Even if they're doing a video thing, they're going to have some live event. But this, sort of the Christmas, Hanukkah, holiday season event in October with new computers. Apple, this is it. There's less at stake here, and I think Apple can play with things. I mean, if you remember, almost 1 year ago, do you remember what Apple did? Is on Halloween, or maybe it was the day before Halloween, they had it was a nighttime presentation. It was the first time Apple had ever done a nighttime presentation. They made it like a Halloween theme with bats and stuff.
Spooky, scary,
it was spooky,
like that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that was a new way to do it. And of course, there were some advantages that because it was a nighttime, it allowed them, because of the time change, to do some things in Europe that normally they wouldn't do. And so it was just trying something new. And now they've done something different this year too. And I agree with you. If they had taken these 3 announcements and squeezed them together into one, it basically would have been like a single 30, 40
Right.
minute announcement, which is exactly
Right.
what they had last
Exactly.
year. But
Right.
instead, they broke it up. And now,
Hmm.
because they broke it up into three, it did mean that every single time they wanted to talk about Apple Intelligence, and they tried to make them a little different, but there was some repetition there because some people
Yes. Right.
might
Right.
only watch the MacBook Pro announcement, for example, because they don't want a Mac Mini. And so Apple wanted to make sure that if you only saw one
Oh
or two
yeah.
of them, you
Right.
still get
Right.
all the details. So maybe if they'd squeezed together into one, they could have made it a little bit shorter. But the reality is that by coming on different days, it really spread out the news. So like Monday,
Right.
everybody was talking about the iMac and the
The
fact it
iMac.
was
Right.
M4 and stuff like that. And then Tuesday, we were all talking about Tuesday, the announcement was the Mac Mini, and people talked about that.
Right.
And it sort of it gave each one its own space, and it allowed us to
Hmm.
think about it. And I sort of like that because, like I was just talking
I did
about,
too. Right.
the Mac Mini announcement comes out, and I spent some time just sort of thinking,
Like
when am I going to get my next Mac Mini? And then the
ruminating.
next
Right.
day, the MacBook Pro announcement comes out.
Right.
And then I guess Thursday there actually was an announcement, but not a product announcement. It was just the financials, and we'll talk about that next week perhaps. But
Right. Right.
I like having things spaced out like this. There's and I especially like the idea of Apple experimenting with new ways to announce products. And last year it was the one nighttime event. This year it's the 3 days in a row. Who knows what it'll be next year? But I say,
Yeah.
let you know what? Let's try something new. Sure.
The biggest physical change to these three devices was the Mac Mini, as you already alluded
Right.
to. First of all, I don't know if you actually watched that video for the Mac Mini,
I
but
did.
when I was watching John Turnus make the announcement, it came back and he had a table next to him with a cloth laying on top of the computer. And I don't know about you,
Yeah.
Jeff. It sounds like you're smiling at us, so you may think where I'm going with that. That just harkened me back to some of those announcements with Steve Jobs, right? Where he would have
Hmm.
like a black felt cloth covering over, the device on stage, and then he would just reveal it by ripping it off. And I just thought that
Hmm.
was so cool that they did that. Of all the technologically, options that they have, green screen and magic that they could do on video, that they still had an actual physical cloth that they would take that off. But even that, you mentioned this already. The fact is, he took the cloth off, and it was the current, or I guess, as of 3 days ago, the
Yeah,
past
that was
Mac
cute.
Mini, and it was the bigger one. And then he lifted off that fake little, hollowed out version of it, and underneath was the new Mac Mini, which, as you said, it's already. I mean, it's literally 5 by 5. It almost, to me, looks the same size as like an Apple TV that you would get today. And the fact that it packs
Almost.
as much punch in that device now is really amazing. Plus, they kept the pricing pretty much all across the same, right? I mean,
Yeah.
maybe just some
Yeah.
incremental bumps, but that is amazing that they made that physical change. I mean, this is such an affordable device for folks that are looking for, a starter computer, but it's even more powerful than, I mean, they even compared it once to like the quote, best-selling PC on the market today. And it's just an
Hmm.
incredible value that you can get with a little Mac Mini now.
Yeah, I mean, just to give it a plug, first of all, in terms of size, an Apple TV device is about 3.5 by 3.5, and this is
Oh,
five
three.
by
Okay.
five. So
Okay.
it's
So
it's
close.
bigger, but it's still. I mean,
It's a
anybody
computer.
yeah, anyone looking at this would say it reminds me of the Apple TV. I completely agree. It's
Right.
also a
Right.
little bit taller too, just to get some air in there, and it's sort of lifted a little bit in the bottom for airflow. But the Mac
Right.
Mini is fascinating because I mean, you just said starter computer, and I completely agree. The Mac Mini's been around for a very, very
Hmm.
long time, and I remember like when my wife's mom needed a computer years ago, the Mac Mini, I just wanted something super cheap that she could use with her existing monitor and
Yes.
keyboard and
Right.
mouse. And the Mac Mini was
Right.
perfect. We got the low end model, the cheapest one. It was perfect. And yet, you can spec them up like I did. I mean, I didn't get the M2, I got the M2 Pro. And you do that and you get some extra storage space and some extra RAM, and you have a computer that is
Yeah.
can be almost as powerful as like the Mac Studios, the Mac Pros. So
Right.
you have this huge range. You can go from just a basic, simple, I think that's what, $500-$600 computer,
That's right.
all the way up
499 is where it
to
starts. Right.
2000 or more to really spec it up. And
Right.
I love the I love that you can sort of make what you want of it. And then I
Right,
have
right.
the Apple Studio display, but if you want something different, if you want one of these new displays that's like twice as long, or you choose what you want, whatever keyboard you want. You want the Apple keyboard, you want a third-party keyboard, you want to have a trackpad, you want to have a mouse. You just have so many different choices with the Mac Mini. It's a fascinating computer. It's even more interesting now with the new design. I love it. I love it.
You mentioned a keyboard and mouse. This did not warrant its own video announcement,
Mhm.
but Apple released updates to the Magic Board, the Magic Trackpad, and the Magic Mouse. And why this is so significant? Why are we talking about this? Because finally, these devices can now be charged with USB-C. Like, these were some of the last remaining Apple devices that required a lightning cable. Is that right, Jeff? I think you have one or two of these, right? The keyboard or the
I
mouse?
do. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And they had Lightning, and the ones that I still use are Lightning. And it's a little bit of a pain because it's like, what do you like? For example, for my Mac Mini,
Right.
just about everything I'm doing is USB-C, but that keyboard is Lightning. And so I still have a single Lightning cord, which,
A
in
lightning
days
cable.
past I would use with my, iPhones and stuff, but they've now all gone to USB. So like the only thing I'm using the Lightning cord for now is charging my keyboard. And how often do you charge a keyboard? Once every, I don't know, 6 months, 3 months, forever. And then
Right. Right.
likewise, and for my Mac Mini, I've got the big extended one, like you're showing on the screen now, that's got the separate
Uh-huh.
number, what do you call it? The number
Numpad.
pad
Yeah,
and
number
stuff,
pad. Yep.
numpad. But then I have another older Magic Keyboard without the number pad, just a small one. And I use that one. I keep it downstairs and I use it extensively because if I'm downstairs and I don't feel like going to my upstairs computer, I just want to use my iPad, but I want to have a keyboard so I can get like some real
Mm-hmm.
typing done. I
Right.
will
Right.
pair the keyboard with the iPad, and then I've got my trackpad there and I can get some work done. And then I take that same combination and use it with my Vision Pro if I want to get more work done with my Apple Vision Pro, and go between the two of them. And again, those are all things that I need to charge with Lightning, and everything
Right.
else in my life is USB-C. I will say, however, that, and they've gotten some slack on this, the only change this week is they just took out the Lightning port and put a USB-C port.
But in
And it
USB-C.
is a bit of a
Yeah.
missed opportunity because you have to
Yeah.
assume that now that they've done this update, they're going to keep these accessories static for a number of years now. And,
Yeah.
it would have
Yeah.
been nice if Apple had done a little bit more. One thing that I would have loved, and it's the feature that I love on my Logitech keyboard that's in front of me right now at my office, is that I can press a button and I can make my Logitech keyboard switch
Oh,
between
yeah.
talking to my PC and talking to my
Right.
iPad or
Right.
one other device. And
Right.
I would love to have that on Apple's keyboard, which I really love, because for me, it's a bit of a pain that if I switch from my iPad to my Vision Pro, I need to go into settings. I need to say, forget this device, and then go
Right.
to the new one and then
Connect.
pair it, and then back and forth. And it's just a couple seconds. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be too complaining, but it would be so much easier to just hit one
Right.
key
Right.
and say, remember 2 or 3 different Bluetooth configurations. And this would have been the perfect time for Apple to make
I
that
agree.
change.
I
And they
agree.
didn't. So,
Yeah.
oh well, so be it. But at least we have USB-C now. So.
Well, it's been a big week for Apple. Not only did they come out with a brand new Mac Mini, a new iMac, a new MacBook Pro, but we talked about this a week ago, Jeff. iOS 18.1 came out this past Monday, and I am confident you and I have both downloaded it. I know I have been playing around with it, although I feel like I've just barely started to scratch the surface of everything. But that was yet another big story that came out this week. And this is our first introduction, like you said. In those 3 announcements for the hardware products, they kept talking about Apple Intelligence, but now we have it actually in our hands on the brand new iPhones, at least if you have an iPhone 15 Pro or an iPhone 16 or 16 Pro.
Yeah, it's a big update. There's a lot that was added that was not quite ready in 18, but is here in point one. And you sort of have the Apple Intelligence, which is just a whole host of changes, and then you have the non-Apple Intelligence stuff. So I guess we'll start with the Apple
Right?
Intelligence and say
Yes.
that, John Voorhees probably summed it up in his review. He says it's a mixed bag, and that's what I feel. There's
Yeah,
some
I agree.
interesting things here. There are some strikes of genius, and then there's some stuff that just, I don't get it. And in some ways, I don't get it. Last week I was really poo-pooing some of the writing assistance tools, and
Right.
I continue to feel like for me they are totally useless. But I will tell
Okay.
you, as I've been thinking about it and I've been listening to other people talk about it, it does
Yes.
remind me that I happen to be in a profession as an attorney where I write for a living. And so writing is second
Right.
nature.
Right.
And a lot of other
Right.
people are in some sort of a business where writing is second nature. And yet there are other people that just, writing is not something that comes to them naturally. Not that they don't have the ability to explain their thoughts very well. It's just not a natural skill. And I remember that for years, when
Right.
my
Yeah.
mom was alive, she ran a preschool, did a fantastic job with it. But sometimes she would have to send like a big letter to the parents about stuff. And she would often ask me, could you write it for me or could you change it? And I could tell that she just didn't have the confidence in her ability to
Yeah.
express thoughts, that a tool like this, where you could sort of do your best
You were
and
her
then
AI.
copy,
You
exactly,
were mom's AI.
copy the text and say, make this sound more professional,
Right.
it would
Right.
probably improve it. Now, again, it's not going to be the best. And you
Yeah.
might want to go adjust it, but at least it would do something. And so I think that for a lot of people for whom, verbal, writing expression, they just don't feel like it's a strong point. Everybody has the things
Yeah.
in life that they're good and bad at, that maybe the writing tools would be helpful for them. For me, however, I really they dumb down the stuff that I write. I don't like them at all. Um, a
Okay.
related one
Understood.
is summarization of stuff, summarization of emails,
Yeah.
and I have mixed emotions about that. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. A lot of these word things, I wish that it was more like, as I pointed out when I reviewed about 18.1, I wish it was more like Grammarly, which can do a really good job of fixing grammar
Yeah.
errors. Apple's initial attempt at that, it just isn't quite as good. But again, you have to start somewhere, and I give them a lot of slack that this is point one. I will point out that what they are doing with photos does interest me more, and I talked about that,
Yes.
in my review this week, that,
Yeah. You had
for
your good
example,
review. Right.
they now have this clean things up feature that again has been in Photoshop for forever, and but it's actually really useful. I mean, I had showed this example this week. If I found like I'm scanning some old pictures from an album, and I found this old baby picture of me, and I put pictures of me
It's
in here
baby
because
Jeff.
I don't have
It's
to
so
ask anyone
cute.
for rights to put the picture in if it's
Right.
myself. But like,
Right.
these pictures just deteriorate over time, right? Like, I don't know what it
Yeah.
is the chemical process and the photos or whatever it is, but it's got
Yeah.
like,
I
these,
see.
like, you're zooming in at like this, I don't know what
Yeah.
that is. The picture fell apart and like there's something above my head, like, and
Just
then
a
on the
little.
left
Yeah.
side of the picture, it's sort of become like a rainbow sort of I don't know what's going on, but I was able to just circle those things and then hit
Okay.
on the little cleanup tool, and it instantly, fixed them. Not just fixing them
Really?
to make them go away, but like,
Yeah.
for
Look at that.
example, if
It's all
if the
gone.
underlying bedspread has like a pattern of it, like sort of a diamond pattern or something like that, it kept that pattern. So like, it
Yes,
made
it
it look
did.
underneath it the way that it should look. And all it's doing is just sort of restoring it and getting it back to where it used to be. So that was really nice. And then I just adjusted some colors. And next thing you know, you have a picture that looks pretty good. So that was one thing
That
that he
looks
did.
so
I
much
will
better.
I will tell you
Really
though
cool.
that for me, using the tool to fix things like dust and scratches and stuff from old pictures. Again, other apps have done this for a long time. And
Right.
I will
That's
say
right.
that on my iPad, for example, and my iPhone, and especially on my iPad, Photoshop, of course, can do this, but Photoshop is almost like, that's the 200-pound gorilla. You don't need that much power. There's an app that I've used for years and years, and I've recommended it in the past in this podcast, called Photomator. That Photomator has a really good tool that I've
Hmm.
used for the same thing. Like, if there's just a little, like a dust line across an old picture, or a crack, you can just adjust. You can just use the Photomator with your. It's nice with your stylus, and just sort of, go along it, or circle it, and it does a really good job too. I don't know if it's better, but it works a little bit differently. So that's one use of the Apple, that technology. But the other one, though, and where I think it actually works better, is if you want to remove things from the background. The
Yeah.
classic example is you've got you and your wife are on the beach, or maybe your kids, and then just somebody happens to be walking in the background, and you just don't want them there. And it does a nice job of, especially if there's some separation and stuff, you can just circle that person and you can make them go away. I did an extreme example here that you're showing on the
I
screen,
see
where
that.
I just made
Oh
everybody
my
on the beach go
goodness.
away to make it look like it was a vacant beach and we were the only ones there, and that's where you get to the
That's
point of,
amazing though. It looks so
ethically, is it
good.
it does look
Yeah.
very good. Is it, appropriate ethically to make it seem like the beach is empty when of course it's not? Whatever. You can decide for yourself where you draw the line on your photo ethics, but you now have the ability, and there's something to be said for having it in the Photos app. I know that whenever Apple has added things to the Photos app in the past, things like reducing shadows and adjusting colors and stuff. It's just having everything right there in front of you just makes
Yeah.
it so much easier. And I know we could go to a third party app and do it and then bring it back in and blah, 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 blah. But just having those tools at your fingertip makes it faster, it makes it easier. So I'm glad that we have this one particular tool. And then I'll also mention that in the photos, before I stop talking about this, they have this photos magic memories feature that you can have like a memory movie.
Yeah.
And it used to be that you would just open up the photos app and see what memory movies they want to give you, and you could adjust them. But now you can just describe to the photos app, I would love to see a picture of, my
Right.
friend Julie wearing red because I'm going to put together a little movie for Christmas and I want, red, lots of red in it. And I did that. I did something very similar. For example, I did one. I said, give me pictures of my wife wearing red. And it did. It had pictures of my wife wearing red shirts and red dresses. It also
Okay.
had some examples where my wife was next to somebody else and they were in a red shirt.
Oh,
So Apple had a little bit of just
not quite.
it's like it was her and a red shirt, not her wearing a red shirt. Whatever. We got to work on that.
Right.
But these movies are fun, and it was nice that you could actually say, give me something of the kids at the beaches over the years, or give me, whatever you can envision that might be a fun topic for a movie, and just a way to sort of find some of your pictures that maybe you forgot about and put them together and put some music behind them. It's fun. It's really good. Now, I have not yet tested the enhanced search feature, which I look forward to because I know this from
Okay.
my legal
Good.
practice
Yeah.
that doing like a regular search is always good, but doing an AI search is sometimes better because it can find things that maybe my search term doesn't specifically say. I may
Right.
say dog, and it may also look for something else, related words. Those types of AI searches are powerful. On my iPad, I'm told that it's still indexing my photo library, so it's not letting me do those searches
Oh.
yet. I'm hoping that maybe by this weekend it'll finish indexing everything and I can do it. So, writing tools in AI, it's a first effort. The photo tools, a little bit better. But it's the brave new world of AI. So have you, I mean, I know we just had it a few days, but has anything jumped out at you yet, Brett, in terms of the AI stuff?
Honestly, this is how silly it is for me. The first thing I wanted to do was to see the new Siri.
I do like
And
it. I
so,
know it's eye candy, but I like it.
but I got to tell you, I downloaded, I upgraded, and then I'm like asking Siri to come on and do something, and it's the same old. And I started getting frustrated, Jeff, until I'm glad you pointed this out because I finally found this out as well. Not only do you have to download and install 18.1, you have to go into the settings and you have to actually turn on or opt in to Apple Intelligence. It's a whole
Right.
new little a section there in settings that you have to go into now and say, yes, I want to be part of the Apple Intelligence. I don't know if they call it a beta. It was something like that they called it, right? But you have to opt into it. And then it takes a while for you to actually be approved. Or I think I heard somebody else, Jason Snell was talking about this, that what they're actually doing is downloading some of those models and some of the, the tools of the software utilities, whatever, to
Yep.
your iPhone in order to have that work. So maybe that's what we're waiting for. But I think just like you said in your review, I got in within maybe, I don't know, 20 minutes or so. I just said, yes, I want to opt into this. And then it was available. And sure enough, as soon as I had that turned on, I had the new, I like how John Voorhees says it. It's basically the Siri flourish. So instead of that little circle at the bottom now, your whole screen does a different color. And I got to say, I like it. Sounds like you do too. Although I thought the exact same thing that you said. This is really cool now for the first, 2, 3, 4 days. Is it going to get old after a while?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
I don't know.
I even use this in CarPlay, and it's cool. The whole CarPlay screen does this. My iPad does it as well. I just thought that was really cool with the new animation. So that's as little petty as I am. Like that was the main thing that I was like looking at. I did like the notification summaries. We'll talk about that in the know in just a moment on turning that on. I do like some of that aspect on there. Just quickly, the comment that I had about my email summaries or even the notification summaries. I don't know, Jeff, if I'm along the same lines as you that it's not helpful or I just don't trust it yet. And is that
Mhm.
maybe just the fact that I'm never going to trust it, or is this just the maturity or the eventual maturity of the Apple Intelligence. Because right
Yeah.
now, even if I see a summary, I was like, well, that's good. But now I want to go read the entire email. And I'm like, well, this isn't saving me any time because I
Mhm.
want to see first of all, I want to say, is that summary actually correct? Did I miss something? And it's the FOMO kind of an aspect on there. But
Mhm.
so far, I like it just as a comparison aspect, but I can't trust it just yet. And I don't know,
Yeah.
again, if that's just me being an old foddy, or is it just the fact that at some point eventually we're going to get used to it and it's going to get better and everybody will be happy, including me,
Yeah,
about that. I don't
I have
know.
the same way. There's one of these features that's in the Mail app on my iPhone that I'm looking at that if I think it's on by default, and then you can toggle it by tapping at the top right of the Mail app when you're looking at your inbox. If you tap the three dots, you can
Right?
turn on or off this thing called Show Priority. And if you have it turned
Yes.
on, what the AI tries to do is, if you have a whole bunch of emails in your inbox, it's going to
Right.
put at the top a little notification of the one or the two emails that it considers to be the most important. The
Right.
idea of it
Right. I
is
saw
good. I
that.
mean, right now, as I'm standing here, I've got 24 unread emails. Do I start at the top? Do I start at the bottom? How am I going to start to read through those 24 emails? I like the idea of the iPhone being smart enough to say, why don't you start with this one? The
Yeah.
problem though is how effective is it? I mean, the other day I did it for me and it brought
Right.
two emails to the top of my screen. One of them was an email where somebody else that was sending it to me, they actually put in the summary line urgent. I mean, I guess that's a way to tell
Oh,
you and so
okay.
sure and no, the reason it was urgent is because he was having computer problems and he was emailing our help desk at my law firm, and then he just copied me on it too. So it wasn't really urgent for me, it was more urgent for him. But I can understand, sure, the AI sees the word urgent, it's going
Yes.
to bring that one up to the top. But
Yeah.
the other one that it brought up to the top was I don't want to say a spam message. It was like a newsletter type thing that it was like there was nothing. I mean, maybe they were saying that they had an urgent sale, or I don't even know what it was because I didn't pay attention to it. I'm like, really? This is the one that you brought to the top?
That's that
I
important.
it bothered me enough when it happened that I immediately turned off that feature. And then I have since then
Okay.
turned it on again. I
Okay.
mean, I'm going to give it some more time, but
I know.
I,
Same.
I love
Still
the
playing it.
idea. I
Yeah.
love the
Yeah.
idea, but unless you
Yeah.
can trust it, which gets back to what you said, Brett, if you can't trust it, is it actually helping your life or is it just annoyance? Anyway,
Yeah.
so that's Apple
Yeah.
Intelligence. There's a lot there. We're just at the point one stage. Point two is coming in December next month. There's a long ways to go, but the dawn of Apple Intelligence has begun. So
I'm glad. Just back to the photos thing. I'm glad that you went through some of that, and I loved your comparison pictures here in your review. I haven't had a chance to try any of that out. I'm looking forward to doing that on there. But just quickly, just going back to what you said. I think you had another story that you linked to today, where somebody said yes, that you can use these cleanup tools in photos with a clear conscience, because you made the point. It's not like this is a brand new thing. We've been able to touch up and Photoshop photos for years, but I don't ever remember this much of an outcry about whether or not that this is something that you should do or you shouldn't do. Is
mhm.
it are you being untruthful? Like, I don't remember this much belly aching about it, or is it just maybe because it's the iPhone now and it's in our hands? Maybe it's a lot more accessible. I'm not really sure, but I did like this article from Joe Rosensteel that you linked to. I thought he did a good job of making some good points here about, I mean, we crop photos today. Like, nobody really cares if you crop something out of a photo, right? We've been doing that for a long time.
Mhm.
So I like one of his examples here. He has his friend where he just basically colored out a strap. He had a bag across his torso, and he
Mhm.
just cropped out that strap because it just didn't look good in the picture. It was a green color, and it's like, that's fine. Like, I don't have a problem with that. The fact that you touched up your cute little baby picture, that's fantastic. That's what those little tools are
Mhm.
there for.
Yeah.
Obviously, just like anything else, it can be used for good and can be used for bad. But I don't know. It's so weird to me that we're seeing so many people talk about this, from, I guess, a morality standpoint of whether you should do this or not. And I just
Yeah.
don't think it's that big of a deal. But anyway, we'll
You,
see. I mean,
you can't help but think about it. I mean, I think that you don't want to get political here on the eve of the election, but I do think that all of the
right,
the Trump fake news stuff has and the severe risk that people truly can use AI tools that are a lot more sophisticated than what is in
right.
18.1
The
to
deep fakes
take
and stuff.
video
Yeah.
and do deep fakes and stuff like that. And it is starting
Hmm.
to cause people to question, and that plus the gaslighting that we see in everyday society is starting people to say,
Yes.
when people
Yes.
just deny. So I think it has something to do with where we are in society, and it's a far bigger concept to get into than we have the space or time
Yeah.
focus for the podcast. But I do think there's something there, and it's something that you think about, and you just have to draw the line yourself. And but it's possible, I guess it's worth mentioning, however, because if you take a picture that you and some of your friends are in, and you do something that you think is meaningless cleanup, like taking off the strap, if you share the picture, other people, maybe, and for some reason you have crossed the line for them that you yourself don't see, and they may think, wait a minute, is this even the picture? And Apple will, even if you bring up a
Right.
picture that you have removed things from, they have like a little icon at the top, I think it's at the top left, that indicates that somebody has used that touch-up feature, just to give
Manipulated
you
it,
that
right? Yeah.
that little bit of a head. It's
A
not quite a
visual cue.
watermark, but just sort of a little cue that's on top of it. So, but again, this
Interesting.
is this is a debate. It's one for the ages. We can have a whole show just on this.
Okay, I think that's probably plenty on 18.1, but a couple of things that you will link to today as well. A couple of changes in the Apple Music app. I saw this. Now
Hmm.
you can share through TikTok directly from the Music app, and it seemed like there was something else. Well, this
You can.
story talks about the iPad tab bar that's a little bit different,
Mhm.
which is
In
nice.
Apple Music, you can now customize that new tab bar they have at the top. So for example, if you have a playlist that you love
Okay,
to use,
gotcha.
you could stick that playlist that you use all the time up there in the tab bar. I mean, it's a little minor little thing. There's a lot of 18.1 minor changes that are not Apple Intelligence, but there are things like, recording phone calls. If you wanted to do that, again,
Yeah.
there's sometimes some legal implications if you don't disclose that. Apple gets around that by announcing it. I haven't tried it yet, but my understanding is that if you do record a phone call, much like nowadays, if you record like a Zoom call or things like that, it will announce this is being recorded in a voice, so everybody knows that. And there's some other little features too. So 18.1 is not just Apple Intelligence; it's got other stuff
Yes.
too. But those are the big ones.
And I'm glad you mentioned that because you linked to another story today where Julie Clover, thank you, Julie, was pointing out what are some of the things that you can use in 18.1 if you do not have a 15
Yeah.
Pro or a 16 Pro. And if you've got an iPhone 12 or 13 or whatever, that, yeah, there are still some other things in here that you can use, including the phone call recording that you just mentioned, Jeff. Some of the AirPods features, I think you can still use the new hearing features, which we'll talk about next here. But you can still get some of these brand new features in 18.1, even if you're not on the brand new iPhone, one of the brand new iPhones. So I
Right.
thought that was good. But one of the things that I just got around to doing this morning, in fact, is I tested my hearing, Jeff. I ended up having to go into like my bedroom closet and close the door because it kept yelling at me that it wasn't a quiet enough environment. But I got it done. Thank goodness I have no hearing loss. Although it seemed pretty exact. It was like -6 decibel in one or 10 decibel in the other or something like that. I
Yeah.
didn't dig too deeply into the results on there, but I just thought this was a great article you linked to as well from John Voorhees. Like we now, just the fact that you can do a hearing test, and it seemed to be pretty comprehensive for me. I mean, it took me probably about 15, 20 minutes to get through the
Hmm.
entire thing. And I felt like it was pretty comprehensive. And I like that. And so it'll turn on some of these features automatically for you if it determines that, yeah, you do need a little bit of help on some of your hearing.
Yeah, when I tried to do the test, I tried to do it as I'm sitting right here in my office, and just because of the air conditioning, there's like an AC vent I can hear on top of me. I mean, it's just
Oh,
the slight no. I mean, I don't even hear it. It's like white noise, right? It's just the slight
right,
noise of
right.
air being pushed through. But my iPhone and AirPods were having none of it. They told me, nope, that is too much noise. I'm like, it's completely quiet in here
Not
except for
going to
that.
work.
But that was not enough. So I had to go home, and I had to close the door and get into a more quiet space like you. And then I ran through the test, and it told me I was fine. It told me I was like 9 in one ear and 13 in the other, which
Oh,
is
okay.
not a problem. But as you say,
An
other
average,
people it
right?
will find issues. And I mean, this article from John Voorhees, the Mac story. John Voorhees used to be a practicing attorney up in Chicago, great writer, great Mac person. He now works for MacStories, and
Right.
he said that he had a hint that he might have some hearing loss, but when he ran the test, he found out that sure enough he did. And as you say, once not only can it diagnose the hearing loss, but then it can say, okay, now if you wear your AirPods Pro 2, we will adjust the way that you listen to music and podcasts and stuff.
Right.
And when you're listening to the outside world and that's coming in through your ears, we will, lift the mid. I'm saying lift the mid range or whatever it does. It does the things that it needs to do to process the noise from the outside
Adjustments.
world to make it easier for you to hear voices. And he was saying like this was weird. He's like, I'm walking across my room and I can actually hear my footsteps better than ever before. And I'm at the cafe and
Yeah.
other people, I can hear them better than I ever have before. And I think that that is the perfect example that, people that have extreme hearing loss hopefully understand that and get some help and have professional hearing aids and stuff. But
Right.
anyone that's in this
Exactly.
middle, which more and more of us as we grow older are going to probably end up there, um, you know, I can understand someone like John saying, I'm not severe enough to go get hearing aids. But
Like
it
professional
would
hearing
be
aids. Right.
nice,
Right.
yeah, exactly, professional ones. But it would be nice if something like that I already own, my AirPods, could improve
Uh-huh.
the way that I hear the outside world. I mean, this is just great. And we know that Apple loves this increased emphasis on health, whether it's the Apple
Yes.
Watch or,
Yes.
whatever. And I just love that they figured out that this was something that they could do to improve people's lives with the products that they may already have. And I just think it's I think it's great.
I did like the fact that he said when he walked into through the door of his coffee shop, his instinct was to pull out the AirPods and put them in a
Yeah.
case because that's what we would normally do in society. But he resisted that impulse, and so then he kept them in, walked up to the counter, and he said normally his barista is soft spoken, but he could actually hear the barista loud and clear because he had the AirPods in and he had already done this hearing test. And I think that's you hit the nail on the head there, Jeff. It's the fact that like this isn't going to solve everything if you've got some true bad hearing loss, but if it's just enough that maybe you don't even notice it and you just have gone through life, kind of saying what a little more often than others, it's like this could at least boost your quality of life just a little bit. If we can just get over that societal norm of like keeping the AirPods in, like, are you listening to
Yep.
music? Can you hear me? It's like
Hmm.
we've got to get to the point where that's going to be okay. On the other hand, like I don't know, like we've just been trained in a different way. But I just like the way that John covered this on everything. Um, and can I just say quickly, we've been talking about this. This is a hearing test in 18.1. It's available now for pretty much anybody that has an iPhone. And I think you have to have the AirPods Pro 2 in order to do this. But I would just recommend everybody go and try it. Like this isn't something that you should do if you think you've got it here. Just go and try it. I mean, to me, it was a nice little exercise to go through and be like, okay, well, I'm glad that I tested that out. And then it actually show you some of the other settings in the AirPods Pro on the iPhone that you can tweak a little bit if you wanted to do a few other things. I mean, there was a few other settings in there that you could toggle on or off, and I just thought that was good. So anyway, just encourage folks to just go and try it if you upgrade to 18.1. This to me is one of the better options and one of the better features that you can jump into.
One little tip I'll add, Brett, is that I have used for a long time now third-party tips for my AirPods. I use them that there's like a squishy foam or whatever, and I just find them to be more
Yes,
comfortable in my ear. I
right.
found that I could not get the hearing test to work with those on. I had to take those
Oh, you
off
had
and put on like the ones that Apple, which I imagine, Apple has calibrated this very carefully. They,
yes, agreed.
maybe that was a coincidence. I mean, maybe if I tried one more time, it would have worked with those, but I was just having difficulty. So as soon as I removed the foam ones and put the Apple ones on and then got into that super quiet room, that was the combination that I needed. So if you happen to be somebody that's using the tips that are made by Comply or one of those other companies,
Right.
consider going back to the ones that came with the AirPods just to run the test.
Just for this, and the hearing test is a little picky. I thought I
Hmm.
had my AirPods in the way that I normally did, and at first it says nope, not good enough. It had big
Yeah,
X's on there,
he wants everything
and I had to
perfect.
like push them. I mean, I didn't like to like jam them in, but I had to just make sure that they were very snug. That's what it says on right on the screen. It's like make sure they are snug and comfortable. So anyway, just a nice little exercise, and I predict that this is going to even and be enhanced more and more as we go through as they start getting data back from this.
Good
And
point. Good
I'm
point.
saying, yeah, this is just going to be even better as we go through. Let's go from hearing tests to notes. The Notes app, which there is no shortage of love, I don't think, for the Notes app in on Mac, on the iPhone, on the iPad. see if I can get this up. This is from podfeet.com. We don't have to do a whole lot on this, but it's just funny to me that anytime I start talking to folks about where are you capturing thoughts and ideas, even my kids, like that's the first thing that they open up, and they will put everything that they are collecting in notes. My son started driving, Jeff, and so he has to keep track of how many hours he's been driving. What did he do?
Sure.
He opened up a new notes and he shared it with me and my wife, and so we can all track it together. And it's just been neat. So anyway, I don't know if I can get this story up now, but this, I just like the fact that Allison Sheridan, a longtime Mac user, just went through and was talking about some of the highlights and sort of the lowlights, or things that she didn't really so much like about notes. But the one thing at the very top, I do remember I completely agreed with her, is it syncs. It just syncs. Like it's there. It's everywhere. Like I pick up my Mac, I pick up my phone, I pick up my iPad. Even to some extent, I guess I could get it on my watch if I need to, but it's just all there. Like it just syncs so beautifully. And that alone is why I keep coming back to the Notes app.
And not just syncing between your own devices, although that works really well, but like every once in a while, I will have a shared note with my wife. And it's just really nice that one of us can go in there and
Yes.
change things, and it changes for the others. And you can see the little, your face, your pictures up there, and you can see who's made different changes. And that's really nice. But she also, acknowledges that there are some things that Notes is perhaps not as good at. For
Yeah.
example, things like formatting text, which works well if you have an external keyboard and you can just like do Command B or Command I for
Right.
italics. But to change it within the app, it's a little cumbersome to have to go through all those little steps. But I mean, this is almost like a timeless article. There's nothing about 18.1 specifically. It's just sort of
Correct.
like, let's step
Right.
back and think about what does Notes do really well and where is there room for improvement. And I thought it was a nice article. It made me think about the way that I use Notes and the way that I could use it more in the future. So, yeah.
If you're in the market for a new nightlight, I like this article you linked to from Bradley Chambers. The Third Reality Smart Colored Nightlight is the
Yeah.
perfect HomeKit accessory. Didn't really think of a nightlight as something I need to be connected to my smart home, Jeff. But after reading this, I'm like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you can turn it on and off. You can change the color of it and stuff. I remember when my kids were little, we used to have all the night lights in the room and they wouldn't go to sleep
Right.
without them and everything else. And so this was just a little, what is it, $30 device or something, and you can get it connected to your it looked like a nice little device. And so when I read the little write-up on it, I haven't tried it yet myself, but when I saw it, I'm like, this is nice. And I actually like the idea that you can change the color of it and stuff. So you can, have just different shades, or whether it's, seasonal or whatever else. So it looked like a nice little device.
It's one of those things that I initially read from your post, Jeff, and I'm like, that's ridiculous. I don't need that to. Can it get here today? Already ordered, have to do it on there. If you're in the market for a new case for your iPhone, this is from the Wirecutter, of course, one of the, I think, still an amazing resource when you're looking for something to buy. This is the best iPhone cases for the iPhone 16, 16 Plus, 16 Pro, and the 16 Pro Max. Whew. I mean, there's a lot of them. And, this is, of course, iPhone cases are something that, have no issues with people arguing about all the time. But I do like the fact that he goes in here that if you want a leather one, if you want a very thin one, if you want a big one, if you want a protective one, there's all manners of different iPhones cases. And I just like the fact that Wirecutter goes through in as much detail as they go through. And so you should be able to find one or two here that you can use for your own iPhone 16.
Yeah, whether you either take their suggestion or even if you decide to get your own, reading this article will sort of remind you of what are the features that you might want to look for just to get, the best possible case. Because, we all know that when you buy a case, you're going to probably stick it on your phone and keep it on there, for another year or two. And so you might as well do a good job picking up a case in the beginning. This is the first year ever that I did not buy Apple's case because I didn't
really?
Apple, I guess last year I bought the one with the and now I forgot what it's called. It was the crazy leather replacement that came up with I'm blanking on the name of it.
Look it up.
The
It was a
sort of
weird name. Yeah, okay.
I didn't like that the fine woven. I did not like the
Yes,
fine woven case.
woven.
This year
you.
Apple doesn't even have the fine woven case. They've stopped
No,
making
they do
their
not.
leather case, which is probably better for the environment, I guess. I don't know.
Uh-huh.
And so all that they have are sort of the more rubbery ones, which I didn't know if I wanted that. So I have no case at all right now. So far, it's been fine. Because of the flat edge, I don't find my iPhone 16 Pro Max to be all that slippery, and so it's not slipping out of my hands.
Yeah,
I did use a case for my prior iPhone though
I remember
during
that.
certain times, like when I traveled and stuff like that. So I guess I haven't yet decided whether I'm going to get a case or not, but this article made me think about it. So perhaps I link to this really for me more than anyone else today, but I'm
So
thinking
you've
about it.
never
We'll
had
see.
a case for this new iPhone
This is the
16
first
Pro
time in
Max,
my
right?
life that I have not had a
Wow.
case for an iPhone,
Wow,
or at least all the way back to the very beginning. Maybe I
that
didn't have one
sends
from the
chills
beginning.
down my back, Jeff. I was
I
like,
know, but it's just,
because I will sometimes go naked. I will pull it out of the case, and because I have the Apple case. But even just yesterday, I was walking outside with my wife, and sure enough, it fell, and I can see the case got like dinged on the edge, and it's just like,
hmm
just in case, like it could happen, even though that I pamper my iPhones. Anyway, just wow, you're a brave man on that. In the show,
in the
just
show.
one little show you mentioned today, which as somebody that's in the legal profession, I cannot believe I still have not seen The Presumed Innocent
Oh, you got to
um,
watch it.
on Apple TV Plus. It's not a movie, right? This is a series. It's got several
Yeah. The reason
episodes.
you're saying movie though is because years and years ago it was a Harrison
Of
Ford movie.
course,
So there has been a
yes.
presumed innocent movie, but this is a series. This is a TV series. Yeah.
With Jake Gyllenhaal, who I really enjoyed, just seeing him in Roadhouse and some of the other movies he's been doing, and it's like, wow. Now they have a second season that should be on the way. Jake isn't going to be in there, Mr. Gyllenhaal, but he still remains executive producer apparently.
Yeah, I was told, although I'd never read it, that Scott Turow had written a sequel, but I heard people saying we're not really sure how good that would make for a second season. And again, I haven't read it, so I don't know. But Apple decided to instead sort of go the way that what was it, like the HBO show, the Real Detective, whatever, other these anthology shows where every season is something new. Fargo is another example. Every season of
Okay, yeah,
Fargo has completely new characters. Now sometimes there'll be a little thread between the two of them, but as a result, it's the same theme, the same type of show, just different characters. And Apple has now decided to do that with Presumed Innocent. And so I listed here in the book. I'm not familiar with the author Joe Murray. I bet my wife is because she knows books a lot more than I do. But there's an
right.
upcoming book she's already written called Dissection of a Murder. And apparently
Oh,
Apple is
okay.
going to take that plot and turn that into
Oh,
their next one. But
interesting.
as someone who, I guess I'm a lawyer, it's stereotypical that I love legal thrillers, but I would love the idea of Apple having a show that every season is just a great legal thriller, whether it's
Right.
like a who done
That's
it
not
or
bad.
whatever. And so,
Right.
and I have no problem with the characters changing from season to season as long as they're done well. And so,
Okay.
I'm excited for this.
Thumbs
So
up
hope
from
if
Jeff.
season two is really good, then this could be the thing that we may have like, 6 seasons of it, which would just make me totally delighted. So I did enjoy Presumed Innocent as a show and look forward to the second season even more now.
Last little video that you linked to, as Apple is usually prone to do whenever they have a new announcement of new products or so, they have some cute little video commercials to go along with it. And this week was no different. This one was so funny. I laughed out loud, sent it to my wife. And if you watch it, you'll understand why I sent it to my wife. I just thought that this was so cute, although you also linked to another story that some folks don't think is so cute. But I mean, I just felt like it was such an innocent, funny kind of a thing to kind of
Yeah,
highlight.
yeah, yeah.
What you talked about was creating photo memories, which I still haven't like jumped into too deep into my photos aspects yet with 18.1. But this was really, really cool.
Yeah, it's a fun little video. And again, I think it's true to life because like as I mentioned a few minutes ago, you really
Right.
can create a topic and you can create a memory movie and it will find photos that match that topic, put them together, put some music behind it. The music often will be appropriate for what the movie is, and so like if it's a beach movie, it
Right.
might be like a Beach Boy song or something like that. If since I live in New Orleans, sometimes I'll have like a New Orleans type, like a Mardi Gras type collection of
Right.
pictures, and it will pick something from like a local artist like Dr. John or something. So Apple does a pretty good job, and you can adjust them if you want, or you could just take exactly what it does and don't touch it at all, and there's your memory, which is what happens in the commercial, and it's great. So I thought it was a cute
Good
little commercial.
stuff. In the know.
In the know.
So I thought we could pick some of our favorite iOS 18.1 tips so far. I mentioned summarize notifications. I got to tell you, I'm picking this as my tip just to kind of share a couple of things, but my jury is still out on this, kind of along those lines of like trusting it. Is it the way that I want to? And I think it's just a matter of kind of getting used to it and seeing and maybe comparing to the full system of notifications. I get a ton of notifications. I've turned off a bunch, but I still get a lot from emails. Certain email people that send me emails or YouTube notifications. I'm on a couple of Slack channels, that kind of a thing. And so I was looking forward to this notification summarization from Apple Intelligence. Now you can turn this off or on, and I would just recommend that you try both ways for a little bit, for maybe a couple of days, and just see. Right now, I had it on, then I turned it off, I turned it back on now, and I'm kind of in the on flow right now. But you can do that by going into settings and then tap notifications. And then you will see there is a new option called summarize previews. And so what that does, at least for me, that's the one that I'm focused on, is that on my lock screen, instead of getting 18 separate YouTube notifications, for example, that I can just they can summarize it into maybe one. Maybe YouTube isn't the best idea. I will tell you where it is on a Slack channel, for example. That several people are talking back and forth. I usually will get, if it's an important channel for me, I'll get a separate notification for that, right, Jeff? But what I would love it to do, and this is what I'm testing out, is that instead of getting 18 different notifications from Slack, I'll get one notification, and it'll just be 3 or 4 lines of a summary of what's going on, what's happened. Now, this has been in the news, right? Not too long ago, where sometimes the summarization previews can go a little wrong because of the way that Apple Intelligence is interpreting what people are saying. But it is worthwhile, I think, to try it out. And so this is an 18.1. I do not. It might actually be turned on by default, but if you want to switch it back and forth and toggle it back and forth, you can just simply go into settings, go to notifications, and you'll see there will be a new option there called summarize previews, and you can turn that off and on. So just try that over the next week or two, just simply because it's good to see what it looks like without it, which is what we have mostly been working with, and then to try it with it on and see how much of a difference that it makes.
Brett, there have been 1 or 2 times in the past in the, what is this, our 170th episode of this podcast,
It is.
where you
Yeah.
and I have both had the exact same idea for a tip of the week. And I always think that's cute. This week, however, is the first time that, totally unknowing of what your tip of the week was going to be, my tip of the week is the opposite of yours.
Oh,
Because I went to the show note document and I'm like, my
yes.
tip of the week is how to turn off or disable these notification summaries. And I laughed out loud when I saw that your tip was to use them. And of course, the reality is, I'm exaggerating because we sort of are saying the same thing, which is that they are useful in some circumstances,
Yeah.
but they
Yeah.
ain't in other circumstances. And I'll give you a perfect
Right,
example.
right.
So I have all of them turned on for everything. And so I'm literally this morning driving into work and my wife sends me a text message. And you know how I have CarPlay set that it will automatically read the message. So as I'm driving in, I'm listening to it. But instead of reading the message, because of the summarization feature being turned on, it gave me this
Yes.
AI summary of the
Yeah.
message. Now, let me
Yeah.
pause for a second. The message was like, maybe she sent me 2 texts in a row, but I mean, we're talking about 2 or 3 sentences, not something that takes a long time.
Yeah.
So
Doesn't need to be
instead of
summarized.
just taking 10 seconds to read them, it took 7 seconds to summarize them. And the summary made no sense to me. I'm like, what? What? Literally, it just got it completely wrong. And I was like, what do I do? And so the immediate thing that I noticed I could do is if you look at your CarPlay screen, and again, I'm trying to drive, I'm trying to pay attention
Sure.
to the road, for goodness
Yeah,
sakes.
of course.
But
Of
on the
course.
CarPlay screen, I noticed that I should have taken a picture of it, but I didn't do it. Of the 3 like buttons in the middle of the CarPlay screen as this was occurring, the middle one, I don't even know what text it had on there but if I tapped that one, it would switch from summarizing the text
Oh,
message
to
to
the
just
full.
reading it. And then
Right.
once I did that and it read it, I'm like, oh, okay, now I understand what she's saying. But I mean, literally, the summary was just so off. It was bizarre. So the first thing I did when I got into the office this morning is,
Good.
how do
Turn it
I
off.
turn this off? But what I actually wanted to do is, notification summaries. I appreciate your tip because notification summaries are actually really useful in some contexts. I've only had them
Right.
for a few days now, but I've noticed that, for example, some of my HomeKit summaries that tell me whether certain things are on or off, I don't need to see the history of those. I just want to see the current state of it. Or
Right.
like you have a Slack channel where there's a big long discussion.
Right.
I don't necessarily, or at least for the standpoint of deciding whether or not you want to jump into the chat channel, the summary gives you that little of a preview of how hot of a topic it is. I totally like that. So what you can do is that, the tip here is if you go into
Yes.
settings and then you go into, what is it? Siri? No, you go into settings and then you go into notifications. And
Notifications.
then,
Right.
is that where it is? There's
Yes.
notification summaries, and you can adjust it on a per app basis. And so I literally
Right.
just tried this
Exactly.
morning. I turned it off for messages. Hopefully that will solve it going forward. Because for me, I don't
I
get so
did
many
too.
text messages that I need to have the one or two texts from my wife summarized about the football game coming up or whatever it is that they're all talking about. Maybe for that person, summarization is appropriate, but
Right.
for me, I didn't like it. So, and again, this is it just goes back to what we started today's podcast with. When it comes to Apple Intelligence, it is this mixed bag. Sometimes it's really helpful. You're like, wow, that was really nice that you did that.
Right.
And sometimes it's like, just get out of my way. Just let me get to the way it was before. And so, and this is it's going to be like this for at least 6 months as
Exactly.
all this
Yes.
stuff gets worked through and stuff like that. So anyway, that is my tip of the week is to, if you don't turn it off completely, at least adjust it, customize it, realize that you have some control over it.
I just turned off the messages one as well because I think that exact same thing happened to me in CarPlay, Jeff, and it just got the summary. I'm like, I don't need the summary. Like, I want the full thing. So I'm glad that they did give you the ability. You can just turn summarize previews off for everything. That's the top
Hmm.
toggle there. Or you can turn it on and then go down and say, for these specific apps, don't summarize them. Don't give me previews about them. So yeah, that's good. I'm glad that you followed up with that. Hey, it worked. That worked out well. That we were looking at the same tip on there.
There you
Good
go.
stuff. Woo. Okay. A little bit of a whirlwind week. Just like a
Busy
lot of
week.
hardware coming out. We got the new software coming out. Wow. We'll see. We'll see what happens. And like you said, even Thursday, yesterday, Apple had their big earnings call. Just barely starting to see some of the news coming out of that. And I'm sure that we'll talk about that next week. So we'll talk with you next week then, Jeff.
See you, Brett. Bye bye, everybody.